Mark Friedman has a purpose. As managing partner and co-founder of Evolved Profits, he and his team have over 40 years of experience in helping businesses free up cash so that it can be reinvested into helping employees, growing the business, and creating positive social impact. He is a serial entrepreneur, CEO, and the best-selling author of Expense to Profit: Eliminate the Costs That Sabotage Your Growth. Mark loves helping companies create more profits while being an agent for change. This is his purpose, and in an effort to help more companies and more people, Mark, along with co-host Yannick Silver, author of Evolved Enterprise, bring you Profits with Purpose, a podcast that aims to do just that. On the show, Mark and Yannick talk to successful corporate decision makers, exploring valuable lessons learned, experiences in growing a company, ways to reduce expenses, and all the ways a company can have a positive social impact. Join us each week and get in on the discussion so we can all have more profits with purpose. And now, here's your host, Mark Friedman.
Welcome to Profits with Purpose. This week's guest, Jeremy Ryan Slate. He's the CEO and co-founder of the #1 ranked Create Your Own Life podcast. Jeremy also has been fortunate to have over 3.5 million downloads. He must be saying something right to people. 1,000+ interviews, including people who you may recognize names of: Grant Cardone, Kevin Harrington, and Danica Patrick. That's a little bit of a little right turn from the other two. Named the top 30 under 30 in podcasting for 2022 by Podcast Magazine. And Inc. magazine in 2009 named him a top podcast. He's a best-selling author of the Unremarkable to Extraordinary book. Jeremy, welcome to Profits with Purpose.
Hey, Mark, I'm stoked to be here hanging out with you, man. And as you talk about, the one being a little bit more of a turn than others, I don't know, I've struggled for years, especially 1,000 episodes, of figuring out what category to put my podcast in. And it's changed 10 times. Because at the same time, I've interviewed Nick Wallenda from the Flying Wallendas family because I'm interested in what does a circus family do and stuff like that. So I've talked to a lot of business people, but I've also talked to a lot of people that have done some cool stuff in life because I'm always just interested to hear what that takes, man.
So let's talk about your background and how you ended up in podcasting.
Interestingly enough, so I have my master's degree in early Roman Empire propaganda, not a very applicable thing in the world of getting a job, but I actually wrote a whole book on why people worship the Roman emperor and the propaganda tools he used in order to make people believe that. So I taught high school for a couple of years, and in 2012, my mom ended up having a really bad stroke, and it made me look at a lot of things I was doing and that I wasn't super happy doing them. So I made this decision for entrepreneurship, and I tried just about everything that you could do in order to make money: network marketing, life insurance sales, private labeling products and selling them on Amazon. And I eventually just ended up working at a friend's web design firm. I had taught myself how to build websites. I've been a podcast fan since 2006, 2007, back in the days of Adam Curry's Daily Source Code. I'm a big Curry fan. And, at one point in time, I failed at everything else. Let me just do something to learn more. And I started podcasts to just kind of learn from some of the best people I could. And we took off in 2015, had 30 in our first 30 days, we had 10,000 downloads and saw a lot of success, and it kind of led us to everything we're doing now.
So cool. So, people don't realize, but there's really a lot of hard work in podcasting. And look, this is, for us, we started the first week of January. So for sure, newbies at this program. And I know for sure to prepare and everything else, it takes up a lot of time.
Yeah.
Can anyone really do a podcast?
It depends. And this is the advice I always give, Mark, is I think everybody has this idea that they're going to, start a podcast and they're going to do the Joe Rogan show, and they're going to make, millions of dollars on ads, and they're going to sign a deal with Spotify. And it's just for 99.9% of people, that's not the case. So I think first off, you have to understand why you would do a podcast. And for me, it should support whatever business you already have rather than being a business venture in itself, because it creates positioning. It's great for networking. It helps to, bring more people to your message. So I would say, first off, it's understanding why you would do a podcast. But second of all, I would say you really need to differentiate your message, meaning it needs to be different from other people out there. Otherwise, you're promoting other people that do exactly what you do. So does that make sense, right? I'll give you an example, which will make you really get what I'm saying. When you want to copy something, everybody started doing the phrase of we're going to go Xerox it, right? So like it became hard for other companies to differentiate because Xerox had gotten the market. So what happens is if you can't find a new way to communicate that or a new way to differentiate, you may want to consider not starting a podcast because there needs to be a reason people are going to come to your message.
Interesting. Well, that's actually one of the reasons why we started ours, because Profits with Purpose is all about the impact and giving back, which is what we do in our business, giving back to our clients, supported nonprofits or civic ventures that they want to support. So let's talk about, I think, one of the things that you stress a lot about, and that's finding your passion versus following your passion, and why following your passion is a terrible idea.
So there's a book I read, and I would recommend to your audience if they haven't picked it up. It's literally one of my favorite books. I read it back in like 2014, but it's a book by a guy named Cal Newport, and it's called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And the title comes from this. He read this book about the life of the comedian Steve Martin. And they said, Steve, how did you get so famous? He goes, well, I just kept working so hard that one day I was so good, people couldn't ignore me. Huh. And the idea of following your passion isn't always the best way to go about things. I'm 35, so I fall somewhere in that like millennial generation of where, they're not working quite that hard because they're not passionate about it. I'm like, to me, that's kind of a little bit of BS. I think you have to kind of get good at something, continue to get better and better and better at that. And you find out when that skill becomes effortless and when you can figure out what to do with it, you find passion, right? That's where your passion is. But I think for so many people, they're following this thing, which they're never going to find because they're not working towards something. So in following your passion, it's kind of this passive thing of you're following it, you're hoping to find it, like, where's it going to be? Whereas finding your passion, that entails work, right? You're working towards something. Right. You're trying some things that work, trying some things that didn't work, right? I mentioned to you all those different things that I did in the beginning before I started my current business, which we've been running for 7 years now. I learned a skill from each and every one of those things. And I think that's what you have to look at is what did I pick up? What did I learn? Where can I go from here? And how can I use this to one day do something? But I think so many people are either doing nothing or not reaching for what they could reach for because they're waiting to find what they're passionate about. And, I feel like it's because I come from a family that's very much like into hard work. And, my grandfather was a diesel mechanic and my dad was, worked in the machine shop and without a college education, worked his way up to running the company. Like to me, I think there's something about hard work. And when you get really good at something, you can become passionate. But I think becoming passionate before you do something is putting the cart before the horse.
Very interesting. Yeah, most people, they don't look at it that way. And like you said, hard work does, if you do learn from that hard work.
Yes.
And it's like a stepping stone, right? You're climbing the stairs, the ladder of stairs, and each opportunity provides you a little bit more knowledge that at some point will hopefully turn the lights on to what you actually will have a passion to complete and create something really, really unique.
Well, I think it's also understanding your skill set too, or, even what you're naturally inclined to. Like I talked about my grandfather. My grandfather, like, I'm not a tall guy, I'm 5'7", but my grandfather was 5'2". Like he was a little man. And a lot of people look at that and they say, well, there's not many things you're qualified to do. But you know what my grandfather could do? At 5'2", he could fit in a diesel engine. So he goes, you know what? I'm going to take this and become the best. They would call him in from all over the country to come fix things because he could fit into engines the way nobody else could. So he figured out how to fix all these different things that nobody else could fix. And he loved what he did. That's my viewpoint on it.
That's funny. My grandfather as well was about that size. And maybe he was an inch or two smaller. And he actually, when he first growing up, he was a horse jockey.
Oh, cool.
Okay? And then obviously when you get too old for that, well, what was the next thing? He ended up being in the liquor business, selling liquor. So opened a liquor store and had a very successful, liquor business. So yeah, it's funny how that happens, where your job sometimes is dictated by what your physical abilities are, and then you can really, take that craft to the next level. So kind of fun.
Yeah.
So, you also talk about like people and their strengths and not letting ego get in the way. Let's touch on that a little bit.
I think something that's interesting about that, and I was actually terrible about this, Mark, I'll be honest with you. Like, and especially it was something I had to get over when bringing like staff on board. And the first 3 years of our business, I only had one employee. And it wasn't because we didn't have the money to hire. I didn't know how to hire. It was because I kind of stunk at like bringing people on and making them prepared for what they were doing. So the thing I had to really get over initially is, realizing especially when you run a business, you're not too good to do anything in your business, right? Like some things have to get done. And if you don't know how it works and it breaks, you're in trouble because you're effective that thing. Rather than like, if you know how it works and you know what happens, you can at least find the right person, hire the right person, whatever it is. So I got better at, establishing new areas in my business myself, writing up every single thing that needs to get done, creating better training materials, creating, better documentation. So that way, when I brought somebody on board, it wasn't like, okay, this is the job, figure it out. It was, this is the job. This is the exact steps. These are the things I ran into. These are the things you'll run into. So when I brought somebody on board, they could do a better job with that. But at the same time, we even looked at within that, how can we utilize people's skill sets better? And this is something we did a lot in the last 6 months, frankly. Like we have somebody in our team that I'm like, wow, you're one of the best writers I've ever read. So she's our dedicated copywriter now. We have somebody in our team that's just in charge of onboarding. So like what we've been able to do is, since we've found things people are naturally good at, and since we've done a better job at training them, we've been able to get a lot more out of them. But initially, I don't know if you had this problem, at one point in time, Mark. I know I definitely did. I don't know if your listeners did, but I got in the way of my own growth a lot of times because I thought initially I was too good to do certain things in my business. And if you want to put people there, you have to know how it works because, if it's not going well or it breaks or it's going well, you need to know what to do with that.
Interesting. Very interesting. It's funny you mentioned that because a year and a half ago, I brought my son on board to run operations. And, I'm old school. I'm a few years older than you. I'm about 30 almost. And, I enjoy business. I love working every day. People say, aren't you going to retire? No,
I'm in the same boat.
I am never going to retire. Why? Because I love what I do. I love helping people. I love helping businesses be more successful. And he comes in, he's like, well, where is all this stuff that you're telling me? I said, it's up here. He goes, what? How can you remember? I was like, look, I was trained differently. Okay. When I grew up, we had a slide rule. We didn't have calculators. Okay. So it's a whole different methodology. And now that he's taken over, actually, it's become a lot easier because although sometimes I have a problem finding things, but I guess that's what a search button is for, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting that if you bring somebody on and then they train you. I've been retrained into how to make my business more successful today because of that fact. Yep. And so I agree 100%. If you don't train people properly, and I had to be retrained myself to be able to grow the business, right? So let's talk about growing a business, right?
Yeah.
What gets in your way about, and what are the challenges that you have? As you said, you brought people on, so we just talked about that challenge a little bit in the hiring issues. What else gets in your way about trying to grow your business?
What's interesting, Mark, is like, I think so many people make it about leads and they make it about all these different things. I find, at least for me, the biggest challenges were with people. The biggest challenges were initially, as I mentioned, with training. So we really had to work on that. But I'll tell you what, we've been a virtual business since 2015. So we have never had an office. So the bigger thing that we had to figure out, and I think we really didn't figure it out well, as I mentioned, we've been doing this since 2016. We really didn't figure this out well until March of this year. And the reason that we did is we figured out, how do we make an environment where everybody feels like they're on a team and they're working together? And crazy enough, do you know what the biggest thing that actually helped with this was when my book launched earlier this year, with like, you know what? We've only ever met half the people that work for us. Let's fly them all in for the book launch. And literally just having everybody working together, working on this event together, hanging out. Like, we've become a group and become a team. And when you get that, like, that's actually taken us to the next level, right? Like where we are now versus where we are 6 months ago, it's incredible because, people know each other. So they're like, hey, let me pick you up here and you could pick me up there, right? Or, let's all like, and one of the things we've instituted since that was we've done production games. So my favorite one is, I love the movie Top Gun. I actually saw it 3 times, the new one. And I saw it once in IMAX and twice in regular. The special effects are incredible. But we played this game of, if you guys can hit a certain revenue target for the month and a certain production target for the month, we're going to pay for everybody to see Top Gun in IMAX. So guess what happened? Everybody's wearing aviators at staff meetings. Like the Top Gun theme is playing in the background of meetings. They had fun, man. And like that made people even more of a team. So like, we've become big on production games. We've become bigger on training. And it's really, really interesting because I think for myself, I had this idea that it's really hard to do that not in an office. But I think if you can find ways to put people on the same team and have them interact with each other in a different way, like we've been able to do that now, but it's taken us till this year to do that.
Pretty cool. So let's talk about, because this is a big topic right now. And you already mentioned already, and we've been a remote business actually since 2012. So I got a couple years on you from that standpoint.
Damn, you win, man.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about winning, but we're all trying to be successful. And I do, interesting because, we help a lot of different businesses. And one of our clients actually now changed their website to offer employees 3 different opportunities. You can be in the office 100%, 5 days a week if you want. You can be totally remote 5 days a week if you want. And then there's the hybrid version in between. Come 2 days, come 3 days, come 4 days, come 1 day, whatever you want. It was just very interesting how the economy is changing. And you're going to see, I think, a lot more businesses like yours, like ours, that are 100% remote are now acceptable. In the past, maybe not so much. But then again, most people didn't know. We had a corporate business address. And at one time we had an office. And I would pay for an office and a corporate business address just because. Once again, I'm a little bit old school. So you had to have a business address, right?
Well, no, we still do too, right? Like we pay for a business address and we make sure we have a business line and all those things because people expect a certain level of professionalism when they come to your business, right?
Sure. Exactly. 100%. But, but being remote is the way I think, and of course the pandemic helped this dramatically change the way people think. But a lot of these businesses today are not going to be able to grow like they used if they're not flexible. But you guys, you talk about recession-proof growth, right?
Yeah.
Your brand grew by 71%, was going the other way, in a down economy. How do you apply those principles so that our listeners can really try and adapt and change their business? Obviously, 71% is a huge number, but so they can, maybe there's a few takeaways that they would have that could help them with the challenges they're currently seeing in their businesses.
Well, I feel like your listeners are going to sense a theme on this one. I'm going to go right back to where we've been. And, I think one part of it is you mentioned the book I have called Unremarkable to Extraordinary. And one of the biggest principles I talk about there is the way people approach adversity, coming at it head on, figuring out what you can do with it, figuring out where you can win with it. Like, the pandemic was not fun, man. Like it was not cool. Like it hurt a lot of people. It was not a good thing. But the thing I will say is when we looked at that in March of 2020, I was like, I do see an opportunity here if we come head at this. So what we did is when other businesses started cutting back, we started hiring. We started hiring more people. And this is why. Because with those other businesses going remote, they also let a lot of their workforce go, right? Because they couldn't figure out how to, business is down, predictions are down. So we don't know who we can pay and how we can pay them. Our business had been consistent at that time still. So we went out and hired more people because I said, there's people that I can get now that I could not have gotten 6 months ago, a year ago, whatever it may be.
Interesting.
So that was the first part. And the second part goes back to what we've been talking about, figuring out how to train better, figuring out how to build a better team environment. And at the same time, getting a little bit stricter with how we manage our finances, right? Like making sure that we have different holding accounts, making sure that, we have a payroll account, we have all these different accounts. So, it makes it easier to handle the ups and downs of sales because they do happen. And having the right things in place, the right people in place, and the right training in place has been it, right? Like there's been no secret. It's just going at it when other people have run the opposite direction and figuring out where I can find the opportunity in this. Because bad times are going to happen, down economies are going to happen. But if you look at some of the biggest, wealth that's been built, it's been built in down economies when people run away from things.
Right. Amazing. Right. Okay. So here's one of my favorite questions I like to ask people. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Best piece of advice ever given? There's so many, man. I would say for me, the single thing I stick to, and it's a simple one, man, is manage your business on statistics, not how you feel. Every person in my company has anywhere between 3 and 5 statistics they are responsible for on a weekly basis. So we manage based on what's happening with the stats, not like how much we like someone, how much we dislike someone, whatever it may be. It's a simple thing, but the best piece of advice I ever learned is find out what your key performance indicators are and manage your business on those, not on, the person that's in the role, frankly. I know it's a simple thing, but that's been the best piece of advice for me.
Wow. Cool. No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you take the emotions out of it, right? You can see, I think a lot of times a lot more clear than you can when emotions get in the way.
Yeah,
So that's pretty
absolutely.
cool. That's pretty cool itself. Is there anything that I haven't mentioned so far you want to touch on?
Well, I think one thing I'd like to mention, because this is Profits with Purpose, I think the bigger thing that we started doing this year is figuring out like, how can we build like the good work we want to do into our business model? So the thing that we took a look at, since we run PR programs, is we started doing more like pro bono campaigns. So like we're doing a big one for a literacy campaign and stuff right now, because, if at the same time, like if you're not doing this to help other people and to help other people do well, you're doing it just to make money, what's the point? So for us, like we've really tried to do a better job, and we actually, we take on one pro bono campaign a quarter, and we actually let the whole team vote on the one that they're most interested in, because we want to really get people excited about who we're helping, how we're helping, and the difference we're making in people's community. So for us, like that's how we try to make fulfill our purpose with the profits we're making.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I know. For us, and it's funny because you mentioned about March 2020 changed everything for you. Yannick, one of my partners, Yannick Silver, and Damian Zamora, my other partner, we actually launched this business in January 2020. The second business. I have two businesses that I run. My original business, which actually fulfills for the second business. But yeah, so we at that point, launched Evolve Profits and created a program to give back for our clients, help our clients create an impact, because that's so important. Because if you're not giving back, what purpose are you serving? And so, so who knew there was going to be a pandemic, and it took us a little bit longer to get the business up and running, but each quarter this year has been better than the last quarter. So all I can tell you is whatever it is, it's working. Yeah. And that's what it's all about. It's all about the give back. It's all about making the world a better place. And so it's great to hear that you guys have a great program in place to create impact as well.
I think like one of the biggest realizations I've had, Mark, is like, I think so many times, like, not even business wise, like everything in our life, we tend to make it all about like, what's happening to me or what's going on with me. And for me, it's going to sound simple, but the biggest thing for me, the biggest change for me is when I realize each thing I do, how it affects the groups I'm in, my family, the things I'm doing, my community, mankind. And I know those can be big ideas, but at the same time, when you start taking that into consideration, you operate a lot differently. And like, for me, that was a really big deal.
Yeah, no, that's a great visual on how people can be more successful for real.
Yeah.
For real. So where can listeners go, Jeremy, to learn more about you and what you do and your PR business and everything that's going on?
So if they want to check out me, they can check me out over at jeremyryanslate.com. They can find everything else out there I'm doing. If they're interested in finding out more about how we help business owners by using the power of podcasting, I put together a really great resource for them called The 7 Reasons You're Not Getting Featured in Your Favorite Podcasts. So if they want to grab that, they can head over to crushitonpodcast.com and they can find all that over there.
Cool. We'll make sure we get that all in the show notes. Jeremy, I want to thank you for your time. This has really been wonderful.
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for having me, man.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Profits with Purpose. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you are interested in reducing the expenses of your business, creating positive social impact, or contributing to the show, reach out to Mark or Yannick with Evolved Profits by emailing podcast@evolvedprofits.com or visiting the website www.evolvedprofits.com.